Everybody, welcome to the video. Today in this video we're just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna show you guys how to remove the carburetor from a motorcycle like this, a Honda CBR 600 F2. So I've been looking around on YouTube for a while and trying to find videos about this bike, but it's not a really common bike. Very hard to find online in the United States, and it's very hard to find videos about this particular model. I'm not exactly sure why. It's pretty old, 1992, and it's still a 600, still inline 4 with it is carbureted, 1992. But anyway, this particular bike has a leak coming from the carburetor, particularly where the pair of carburetors join with a fuel line, and I'll show you guys exactly what I'm talking about when we get to it. But yeah, there are not a lot of videos of this bike or how to get the carburetor off, or really anything related to it, so I figured I'd make a video about it. So to start off, you just have to remove all the fairings. Now I already did that previously, and I cleaned them and washed them up. And of course you have to get rid of the seat. Now in the seat there's two bolts that come right here. That's where the seat hooks up to the frame. You get those out with a wrench. Then of course the seat will sort of come off, and you'll have access to the tank. So the tank will have a bolt here. Here's a battery. The tank will have a bolt here and a bolt up top. And then we remove this tank. Then under the tank there'll be a few hoses, of course, for the fuel to flow into the carbs. And then we'll remove the air box to get the carburetors out of there. So I'll bring y'all back when the tank is off. All right, guys. So to remove the tank of the CBR F2, you can see right here we're looking at the underside. So the fuel tank, so here's the handlebar, here's the fuel tank. I'm just lifting this up. That is that is where the fuel will go into. That's where you can select whether your fuel is on, off, or in reserve. This bike actually does come with a selector for the reserve. Now you can see that it's connected in two places. This smaller hose running down under is a vacuum hose because there's a diaphragm inside this component, and the gasoline is vacuum fed into this motor. Now that larger hose that you see with the tape and clamps, that is the original hose, and it's super beat up and withered away. So I'm going to go ahead and replace that. I'm just going to run to the auto parts store and see if I can find a similar hose, like the similar diameter. Anyway, you can see that that hose feeds into a T component, a T part right there that splits off into two, the left and the right. Now you can see that in here lays another T that feeds fuel into these two carburetors on the right side. Now it's leaking from an O-ring that sits in the carburetor, and it's leaking pretty bad. It looks like a waterfall if I try to turn it on. Those two need to be replaced, and of course while I'm in there I'm going to replace the other T as well, because there's, of course, it splits off into two, and then it splits off into another two. So of course it'll be a total of 4 O-rings. So that's how we're gonna get to it. So just to take this tank off, you just need to remove the hose from this side, both the vacuum hose and the fuel hose, and this tank will come right off. All right, guys, so the fuel tank is off, and we get a much better look at the underside here. So again, that's where the fuel goes in, and this component down in here, so the thing that this hose attaches to, looks like a little T joint there, and that's where the problem is. So we got to take this airbox off. Okay, and take this to take this airbox off, pretty simple. This is probably the easiest part aside from the tank. We have bolts here holding this upper part, then inside is a filter, and then we get to the velocity stacks that feed directly into the carburetor. Alright, so I just unscrewed the top part of the airbox. It just comes off just like that, and that's what we'll have left. Just go ahead and set that down. This just comes off, the screws like that, and there are velocity stacks. Okay, here, and we'll remove this bottom plastic layer. It's just 6 bolts here, 3 here on the outside, 3 on the inside. This part will come off, and then we'll get to work on the velocity stacks and getting those off. All right, so I went ahead and unscrewed these bolts. Now we just need to come around and remove this little hose here. So we can just grab this clamp. There you go. Okay, and there's a little tab here, so we just lift up, remove, and this, just twist it out. Yeah, there you go. Now the plastic component goes off. You can set it there. And we can get started on the velocity stacks. So there's unfortunately 4 sets of 4 screws for each velocity stack, for each carburetor basically. So 16 bolts that we have to remove. Kind of a pain in the butt, but I will get to that. Now, of course, similarly to the previous lower piece of plastic for the airbox, there's a hose. It's an air hose. There's another hose down here that we need to disconnect. And then this part will just come right off with the velocity stacks. All right, guys, so I removed the velocity stacks. Again, this hose connects right in here. And you should have these gaskets on your carburetors, 4 of them. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and put this away. Again, now I like to leave all the bolts in, you know, here, 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 just for safe, you know, you can put them in a box or whatever, however you like to organize, but you really should stay organized when it comes to working with old stuff, old motorcycles and old cars, because these bolts, they can get lost easily, and replacing them is not fun. Okay, but now that we have that, we have direct access to the carburetors now. So now you can see right in here, this little piece, the brown component there, that's moving. So that's leaking from either edge. And if you have a small leak on a motorcycle from the carburetors, if it's just fumes, it should be all right. You should take care of it, of course, but it's not like, you know, your bike's not gonna explode. The biggest danger with a fuel leak is if you lay the bike down, those sparks that the bike makes when it has contact with the cement, those sparks can ignite your engine, or sorry, the fumes, and burn your engine, like actually light a fire under your tank, and then that's when it can get really dangerous. Now on my motorcycle, these things are leaking like waterfalls, like liquid gas falling down from the carburetors, which is not great. That is unrideable. So we need to fix that ASAP, and it's just O-rings that are in there that are probably just degraded from all the gasoline, and they're old. I mean, this bike is from 1992, and I got it pretty beat up already. So, I mean, yeah, the red wheels, this bike was originally black, purple, and white. I can throw up a picture of it right now for your reference. Is what the original color scheme was. And the previous owner, you know, redid the wheels and bought a whole new fairing kit for it, which is very expensive. It's $450 on the cheaper side for a fairing for one of these bikes, because, you know, they're custom made. They're like made to order, basically. Anyway, that's the carburetors. Now, unfortunately, this is kind of the worst part of the whole experience, right? So, not including the fairings, getting the fairings off, because that's a whole nother story. But the method to get this carburetor off is we first have to loosen these boots that have 2 sets of clamps, one on the engine mounting side and one on the carburetor's mounting side. You can see there's one screw here and the other screw up here. So we only have to loosen one set. For example, we can loosen this bottom one so that the carburetor, when the carburetor comes off, the boot will come off with it. Just choose one set for every single carburetor boot, and it's kind of a pain to get to because there's not a lot of space to work with in here to get a screwdriver in there. I can't even see the other ones with the camera. Maybe down here there's a few, you know, you can see the other two back there. But yeah, don't forget to take this choke cable, get that off of the hook right there, and then the throttle cables are hidden in there. These are the throttle cables here. We loosen these bolts up and we can take it out, and then the carburetor will be out. So I'm gonna go ahead and loosen those boots. Of course, I'm gonna put away these gaskets and put them in a safe place so I don't lose them. And we'll go ahead and loosen up those boots, and we'll come back then. Alrighty guys, so I've loosened up the boots. Now, if this is your first time taking apart the carburetor and actually removing it, it's going to be probably a little tough to actually separate the carburetor from the engine block. It's going to take a little bit of you know, a little bit of elbow grease, and you know, don't be shy about trying to get that off. If you're going to use a mallet to loosen it, to loosen the connection, which some people do, make sure that it's not like a metal hammer so you don't damage this surface right here. This surface has to be has to be as smooth as possible, so that these gaskets actually do their job. So use like a rubber mallet or something like that if that's the way that you choose to go. I would refrain from trying to pry it out with a screwdriver or something. It can really lead to some damage on the carburetor or other parts. So I would say probably just try to shake it out is the best tip I got. Definitely need both hands for this. So I'll get you back when we need to remove these cables here.